Hello, welcome to another episode of Truth and Courage Under Fire. Today we're going to cover some current event topics that's been hitting the news lately. There's been some more truths, but there's been some more half-truths. There's been some more lies.
Lots of misinformation out there.
So tell us, we still got one election outcome as of this recording.
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah, it's around the corner, and I think that what most people are feeling who are on the conservative side, they're very concerned about the outcome of this. And, when you look at what's happening, I mean, one side, the liberal side, Warnock, has got, 40,
That's right, we're
50,
talking about Georgia here.
Yeah, right. 40, $50 million behind him and every celebrity that's, ever taken a stage. And then you got Herschel, who, he's the David up against the Goliath, believe it or not. It's kind of funny. Physically, size-wise, Herschel could crush him and Warnock's this little guy and Herschel's this big old, but really Herschel's the David and Warnock's the Goliath.
And you got the man confessing his sins to the public, confess, repent, atone, and then you got the guy over here hiding all of his sins. Yeah. And the guy hiding all of his sins is the Reverend. It's like, boy, there's just so many things you could talk about.
Right.
But, there's some important reasons for the outcome to still be important. We originally, I think most people said, well, the Democrats got their 50 and they got the vice president who can break the tie votes in the Senate. But it's what happens if you get to 51? That's kind of important. And the biggest thing that people don't think about is that if it's 50-50, all the committees get balanced. The chairman will be, if let's say the Democrats, if they get 51, the chairman is unquestionably, whether it's 50-50 or 51, will be a Democrat. But the makeup, the composition and the sheer raw numbers would be 50-50. Otherwise, of every committee, like in the House, for example, when they were all Democrats, the majority of each committee was Democrat, with a Democrat chairman. Now that the House is rolled over, the chairman's going to be a Republican, and the majority of the members of each committee are going to be Republican.
Mm-hmm. And those committees are huge, right? Right. So those committees are where.
Oh gosh, like the investigation. Take January 6th.
Yeah, the investigate. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how that's been totally skewed, but and so as it plays out. We hope, we pray, and we're taking action to do our best to bring this home. But we'll see, and nevertheless, we move on.
Yep. And of course, the freest and most fair elections ever in history.
Oh yeah.
2016, no. 2020, yes. 2022, the jury stopped. Well, the Democrats won, so they think they're free and fair. But
right.
I also noticed recently that. Just in the last couple of days in Louisiana, a former sheriff, and a sitting city council member were convicted of vote buying.
Wow.
Yeah. They're going out and running up all these people. They had pre-printed ballot of who to vote for. They took these people to the voting stations with their pre-printed who you vote for. They went in and voted. It came out and they handed them $20 bills or whatnot.
The sheriff. Yeah.
Sheriff and a sitting city councilman. Oh, did I tell you they were both Democrats?
Oh.
Yeah. But it's free and fair election, so we don't going to get too.
Well, we won't dive very far into it, but Maricopa County, I don't know who you think you are, you are lost.
Oh my gosh. I haven't unsubstantiated so far, but I've seen that as many as 300,000 votes weren't properly counted.
Right.
Isn't
it interesting that the woman running for governor in charge of the election, somehow the machines break on election day, now that all the pre-voting has taken place, now on election day, and those people who are bringing their mail-in ballots in and doing the voting on the day aren't allowed to vote.
And guess where most of the machines broke?
Oh, yeah.
Republican-dominated.
In the red counties. Yeah.
All right. So that remains to be seen. And of course, the Arizona governor, pronounced governor, Kerry Lake, lost according to that process.
Right.
Has demanded that certain counties under penalty, threat of legal action, certified election results. And
Right.
so here's the governor-elect who didn't recuse herself as the state's elections official, is now demanding under legal threat that she be certified as the governor. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. That's how we want power to be used in this country.
We so need a better voting system. In Florida it can tell you who won or lost in a couple hours, and you got to wait a week and a half or 2 weeks or a month for Arizona or Pennsylvania to tell you.
A third of the people, right? And so somehow they're doing their best, as they say. But it's got to be changed, and we could look at Florida as a great model. Let's. If nothing else, let's just look at what they did, because they did it right and they got it done, and nobody's complaining. You notice that? Either side.
I love Florida more every day.
Right. It's so close to us that, we may be finding a new hacienda.
Well, I was thinking, I know this is a little off the trail a little bit, but, Disney, they got rid of the woke.
Right.
We want to indoctrinate your kids guy that was head of Disney, and they brought back Eigner, and he says, "Well, we're gonna calm everything down." It's just okay. Right. So the governor says, "You guys are going to lose your tax exempt status, and we're not teaching that in school, and we're not doing." And then all of a sudden, the woke corporation goes, okay, we really want your business, so we're going to fix that. But something for another day, right?
Something for another day. Let's move on to our next topic. How about that?
Well, I just briefly, yesterday, there was a big pronouncement from the White House again. You see Kirby talking about it, and what's her name, Jean-Pierre talking about it, and Biden every day, every time he talks about oil, he's the excessive profits. They got 7,000 leases. Well, now the latest information is they're saying the reason that we are going to get oil from Venezuela, the reason we're getting oil from Venezuela is because those awful oil companies in the United States are not using any of the 7,000, now they're saying permits that they have available in the United States. So we are forced to go out of the country to find oil, dirty oil, by the way. We are the cleanest producers of natural gas and gasoline in the world. We have clean oil that comes out of the ground. Our natural gas is cleaner. Our facilities and technology is better than anybody else in the world. So if you want to keep the planet green, you want us to actually produce the stuff and export it to other countries, because Russia has dirty oil and they don't produce it as clean. China is a problem. India.
Right.
It's insane what they do. So the point I'm making here, to make the long story short, is there's a difference between an oil company having a lease and an oil company having permits. And the big lie that the White House is telling you, who are watching us today, is that you can get a lease, although the government's not even giving out leases on federal land or offshore. The federal government is not even doing that. What they're saying is that these leases out on all the other land are leases that the oil company should be pumping oil out of the ground. Well, there's a couple things here. You have to get to the lease, the site location. You have to actually do some geophysical excavation, exploration to determine whether there's enough oil to even use.
You've got to dig a hole in the ground.
Yes, sir. You know, guys, do something. And then if you do find it, you may have to go over a government land. Environmental issues. Save a certain tree frog or prairie grasshopper or something. and so you have to get permits. And the environmental groups, by the thousands, have tied up a lot of these leases, potentially that oil companies could use, in court.
Right.
So you have that problem, and of course you have the President of the United States saying, we're not going to do any more leases in a public, you saw him?
Right.
On TV saying, I haven't authorized one federal lease or drilling operation on federal land to somebody on camera.
Right.
And then he says, we want you to pump more oil.
Right.
So anyhow, I just wanted to make that.
Well, the point is it's the same thing that they're doing with the border issue. They're saying the reason that they're having so many problems at the border is because Republicans are pulling these stunts. And so if the Republicans would would cooperate with the plan, then all these people would not be coming here illegally. But he's the one that made the big announcement that any and everybody and their cousin are welcome. You know, bring the hee-haw gang and come on in. And so it's this thing that they do is they accuse you of what they're doing and how they're blocking things and how they're oppressing the economy and all this other stuff, and yet they want us to take the fall for it.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I'm thinking
it's
is
our fault.
Yeah. You know, another thing that bothers me is you have tens of thousands of disaffected Venezuelans illegally trying to enter the country through that southern border. They're fleeing a despotic regime, the Maduro regime in Venezuela, who followed Chavez. And they've just destroyed the country.
Right.
And all the oil companies had pulled out. In my mind, because the government was nationalizing everything, like we own this, we own this, we own this. So they were taking oil company resources and equipment. So they all pulled out.
Right.
And then what they do is the government make sure it pays all the military people lots of money to support the regime and oppress the people. The people leave the country and then they try to sneak into the United States through the southern border by the tens of thousands. And then we turn around and say, you know what? We need to get some oil out of Venezuela because of those nasty oil companies in the United States aren't pumping from the leases that they can't get to because they can't get the permits.
Right.
So what kind of a deal?
So the circle of crazy is what we're really talking about here is that they continue to create these horrible policies that ultimately put America way down here. That's why Trump was so popular, is that he had an America First policy. And he protected us. He protected our natural resources. He protected our gas and oil industry and help these people actually be productive so that we don't have to depend on these rogue foreign governments who are, dictatorships and all these ugly things, and then have to bring in dirty stuff and, make the planet less green.
Let me ask you a question. See if you're thinking along the lines I am here. What kind of incentive would our federal government provide to Chevron oil company to go pump oil out of Venezuela, knowing that in the past the Venezuelan government nationalized the resources? They probably stripped a lot of those resources, they were scrapped. So what would incentivize Chevron to go back into that country to pump oil?
Nothing.
Except...
Oh, well, of course, yeah.
I have to be a cynic and say I think our federal government has promised Chevron a bucket load of oil.
Right. It's kind of like what they do with the farmers. Stop growing stuff and we'll pay you, and it's the same thing. We're gonna get you the money. We just don't want you doing that anymore.
Yeah. Right. So. Anyhow, I think that we covered oil and gas lease permitting a little bit. I hope you consider what we're talking about here, that you need to look under the covers. So try to imagine what's really going on. As long as Chevron doesn't talk, we'll give you money, you pump oil, everybody's happy. Yeah. So we'll be back in a minute, and we'll continue with a deteriorating economy.
Right. All right, we are back.
We are indeed. And we were going to talk a little bit about the deterioration of the economy. I think that there are people out there that look like the stock market. I think it was, let's see, today's Friday, so it was like Tuesday. The stock market went up 720 points. And everybody go, all right, we're going to start making money again. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, it's down about 720 points. So by Friday, we're back to zero. So the optimism faded.
Very quickly.
Yeah. So, and I just would caution anybody who's watching this who is optimistic about the future of the economy that inflation is going to be tamed, and unemployment is going to stay low, we're all going to have our jobs and move forward, and the Biden administration has done an amazing job with the economy. Hold your horses.
Big hold on the horses there, big hold.
So let me just bring out a couple of inconvenient facts.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, so the savings rate for all Americans is down by almost 70% since 2019.
All right, and the translation for that fact is?
They had money in the bank in 2019. They had more money in the bank with all the COVID relief stuff and all the free checks that the Biden administration handed out to swell those coffers and pay down their debts.
I thought that was for my new cell phone.
I thought it was for my EV, but I couldn't find one that was only cost $1,200. So, but if you look at all those factors, today, almost 70%, the savings rate, with all of that, it has declined.
I see.
That's a bad thing.
That's not good.
Credit card spending, there's the highest rate increase in credit card spending in the last 20 years. So people, they right now when you look at the reports, people are going, everybody's buying for Christmas, everybody's going on vacation, everybody's having a good time. The consumer spending is strong.
Right, which is supposed to be a reflection of a strong economy, but we really don't have one yet, and yet people are acting like it.
Right. And the way they're doing that is getting new credit card accounts and new credit cards, and they're maxing them out.
Oh.
So they're maintaining their standard of living by going into debt. So this is going to be when the chickens come home to roost kind of thing.
Right.
January, February, and March, people are going to be in trouble. I guess Linda wants me to say that tithing is also down tremendously.
Yes.
That would be from the little histrionics off.
Right. Well, and the church ends up suffering because people aren't giving, because we're consumed with our consumerism and running our credit cards up, and so then churches get in trouble.
Right. And people feel like the first place they can cut is the worst place they can cut, right?
Right. Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, so if I don't have money, then the church gets nothing, right?
Well, better take that up with God.
Right.
If you want things to better, you might want to reconsider a little bit, right? How you're going to manage your way through the coming recession.
That's right.
So here's another one. Let me back up and explain just a little bit. Our economy runs mostly on consumer spending. 70% of our entire economy is based on how good we're doing and poorly we're doing is based on consumer spending. 20% of that is home purchases. So if it basically, as America goes, as our economy goes, all you got to do is look at the housing industry, and that's going to tell you almost everything you need to know about how the country's is going to do going forward. So
if people are buying and selling houses, then it looks good. If that's not happening, then we're in a bad place.
Exactly. So what's going on with home purchases? Here you go. From October to November, home sales have gone down 4.5%. You go, well, that's not a whole lot. Well, home sales have been going down for the last 5 months. Consumer sentiment, down. The big thing here is what you just said. Interest rates go up, people can't afford to buy.
So we've gone from where to where interest rate wise? We were at...
people could get rates, low. It's 3-ish.
Right.
3%-ish in general. Now we're looking at 6.5% and 7%. So the rate
doubled. And so now less people can afford to buy because when you go to buy, you have to have more money for down payment, and your house payment's going to be higher because the interest rates have gone up, right?
Right. So you buy less house.
Okay.
You renege on contracts you had. to
Right.
buy a house because it takes so long to do the paperwork and get approved nowadays, and then the interest rate goes up in the meantime. It's right now the Fed's going to raise rates again. Everybody's predicting another half a point to interest rates, so they're definitely going to be consistently over 7%. So that's another thing they have to consider, and so the housing market is bad.
Right. So with the housing market being bad, how does that affect everything else in the economy?
Well, think about it. You want to put you want to put new appliances in the house. You want to buy the lumber to frame the house. You want to buy the bricks for the facade or stonework. The plumbers, the electricians. That's why housing is so important. Is because all of these craftsmen stay employed by building houses, and if they don't have the houses to build, they're scrambling for renovation work and stuff like that. But a lot of them are going to go under. It's going to be awful, and so the unemployment ticking up is going to affect them. That's another thing is, let's take Amazon. Amazon typically during the holiday season hires 100,000 seasonal workers. They got to get those Christmas packages out to the people, and they got to get them out on time. Guess what Amazon's doing this year? They're laying off 13,000 people. That's a swing of 113,000 employees, from seasonal hiring to letting people go.
Wow. So people who normally count on even like holiday employment, which might even be like a second job for some people, they can't find it at these big stores like Amazon, which I guess as Amazon goes, then the world goes, right? And they're on the opposite trend.
Yeah, how are you going to pay off?
They're laying people off instead of hiring the 100,000 plus.
Yes, sir. So these people that seasonally hire are going to pay for the Christmas presents.
Right.
The credit card bills.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
They're going to have to either find another job somewhere that are supposed to be plentiful, or they're going to have some serious problems paying the piper in January. So here's one that near and dear to my wife and my heart. Red flags. What I'm talking about for how bad things are going to be 4 or 5 or 6 months from now. The red flag for us is that year over year, people who got pets during the pandemic, got companionship as they worked from home or didn't work at all. A lot of them got pets, brought them into their homes, and from last year to this year, people are turning their pets into shelters in droves, and it's up 60% from last year to this year. Now, if that isn't a warning flag, they ask people, well, why are you dumping your animals back off at the shelter here? And overwhelmingly, what they're saying is, inflation has made my cost of living so unbearable that I can't afford to feed and house and take my pet to the vet. 60%.
60%. And so overcrowded, shelters, not enough shelters, shelters who turn people away, like in our county right here, Linda just said, they're not even allowing you to drop them off anymore because they already have too many. And so where do people drop them off? They drop them off in places where, they can drop them and run. And that's neighborhoods sometimes and county roads and places, and it's sad. But what's happened is all of these things are indicators. So what are some things that people can do or should do during this time, Tom, to secure their financial situation?
Boy, there's several things you need to look at. One, top of my list is you have to be debt-free. And it's a little late for that now. It's not too late, but it's a little late to consider, because if you're out of work 3 months from now, you're not going to have much time to save. But if you're thinking about a big purchase, like new automobiles, they're up 5-10%. Used cars are up, I think even a little bit more than that right now. And in fact, that's another indicator, is that even as new cars and used car prices have gone up, there was a moratorium on repossession of automobiles. Did you know that?
Yes.
The federal government had a program where they said you can't go out and repossess people's cars because they need their cars to get to work when they go back to work eventually.
Right.
Well, but that's over. So repossessions are up. Dramatically. And the people who are almost at the point of repossession the numbers have gone up quite a bit. And so you don't want to be making a big purchase.
Right, right.
Most importantly to me.
Certainly not overextending, but a couple of things I think are very significant. So you said debt-free. I think and you would agree with this because I know you practice this in your own life. But okay, so the Lord says He wants the first fruit of our income, right? And so you need to be doing that. I mean, you need to be making sure that your giving doesn't stop, right? And I'm not just saying that because I'm a pastor, but I've lived this way my whole life. And I think it's very, very important.
It's worked very, very well for Linda and I.
Yeah.
Linda and me in our lives.
Right.
It has been a wonderful thing.
Right. And then I think the other thing is that you got to start thinking local. You got to start thinking about, what are some of the things that I might be able to trade for, right? So in our coalition, we started a barter system where you can trade and exchange goods and services. And, who in my church can I trade with? Is there somebody that I know who's a dentist that might need one of my services, or other things like that? And you got to start thinking local. What we've done is we've lived from this global economy for so long that we've forgotten that we live in a local community. If you had some chicken eggs, who would like to trade with you? Different things like that.
Yes, and you have to think about the mentality, and I think this applies to young people more so going forward. The older people have been around the block a little bit.
Right.
They recognize there's got to have and must have.
There you go.
And for the younger people, so much of what they're trying to possess today, they think is got to have, and it's not. It's like, well, it would be nice to have. And I think you have to seriously look at, particularly services. The goods part is declining. There's no doubt that most people are going from buying things to buying services, and that's declining. It's like Disney Plus and some of these other that's a typical service.
Right.
And it's like, do you need it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you don't.
Yeah, does your life depend on it?
Do you need the $200 phone plan, or can you get away with the $50 phone plan that you renew every month?
Good question. Yeah, I think it's important for people to start realizing that it's time for us to change. And sometimes
and you got to prepare for the worst.
You do. And you have to prepare yourself, and you have to make changes. And that means, discipline. I'll get it out.
So we'll see you next week. We hope you take our message to heart, and we'll talk to you again real soon.